So one of the stories that I've been paying the most attention to is the growing race for legitimacy in US dollar-pegged stablecoins. Stablecoins are used by traders as a way to escape crypto volatility without needing the traditional banking system, and these days are also being used in emerging economies that might otherwise use dollars as a form of savings that can't be devalued by their local government. There have long been concerns about Tether, the original still dominant player, and more specifically how it manages the funds backing the more than $62 billion worth of tokens. Earlier this year, we got a look at the assets that make up its reserves, and many were surprised to find that it had a lot of valuable investments, but few actual dollars. Shortly after, the group behind the second largest stablecoin, USDC, released similar information. And while it looks a lot like a less risky basket than Tether, it's still not just dollars. Well, yesterday we saw a new transparency report from a smaller player, HUSD from Huobi Exchange, that makes up just half a percentage point of the stablecoin market, but who revealed that their dollar-pegged token really does have a dollar in a money market account, not an investment worth a dollar behind it. Naomi, I am happily at this point thinking that maybe we have a bit of an arms race here. So to you, does a less risky stablecoin move the needle, or is bigger still better when it comes to this sector?
Yeah, I think that competition in stablecoins is awesome. Competition in money is awesome. Competition in private money is awesome. The fact that we have all of these competing firms is fantastic. I mean, we talked on the show before about this wildcat era banking when you had this terrible things going on, and George Selgin, monetary historian, kind of shutting that down and being like, actually, those days were great. And when you didn't have the government with their stranglehold on the private sector, you had all kinds of options for people. And it was so good that the government had to tax this private money into oblivion in order to get people to stop using it because people preferred it to the government notes that were issued. I think it's the similar situation here. We're probably going to see big backlash against stablecoins, if we're being honest, with governments taxing these into oblivion and doing whatever they can to get this out of people's minds in terms of options. In terms of like what's risky and what's not risky with stablecoins, it's interesting because you are fundamentally always going to have a risk. There is always an issue or risk when you have these centralized entities. And even if they have audits that are quarterly or whatever, that it's very difficult to kind of gauge what's going on behind the scenes at any given time. They may have the funds there at one particular moment. It could be lend out, but then they bring the revenues back. Like, it's just, you always have that issue or risk. But that being said, we have risks in so many of the things we use. And I think we always put money on this pedestal as if it's this thing that should be completely riskless, which is why government should take it over. But unfortunately, when government takes it over, that absolutely does not take away risk. Sometimes it actually adds more risk because monopoly on money just means people don't have any choice in that money. So I think it's very interesting that they're backed 100% by cash held in money market accounts. That's cool because if people show that they value that, then maybe they'll start flocking to services like this. And maybe it does highlight what consumers actually want from their stablecoins. Maybe it's not that they need it to be 100% backed at any given time, or maybe there'll be some sort of a bank run and people will realize that, oh, this is actually something that I should value in a money. I just haven't had historical experience with this going wrong before. But very interesting to see this report come out. But Will, I'll throw to you for your thoughts on this.
Just in a general perspective, it makes sense to me that all of these stablecoin issuers have a lot of cash in money markets because their money markets are typically extremely liquid and then low yield. And that's literally the point of why they exist, because you want to maybe beat inflation a little bit. But the point is to keep your dollars as dollars going forward. If I put $5 in money market, I want there to be $5 in a money market in 10 years from now. And that's what Tether and USDC and all these other companies want. They want access to these, to this money and to these bank accounts, and they want to earn a little bit of yield on top of that. They wouldn't have an incentive to make a stable coin if they didn't have a yield. Of course, like you can have a front end and charge transaction fees, but nobody's trying to make PayPal. You're trying to make a new financial system, and you have to figure out ways to earn yield on whatever product you're making. I think the more interesting thing to me personally is seeing that there's a lot of competition in the stablecoin space. I think overall in the future, like 5-10 years, there should only be a few winners and losers just because of how money just evolves. Like there's competition between money, and the losers fail hard and they don't exist anymore. But for now, like I'm a huge fan of just seeing as many stable coins hit the market as possible and being as decentralized as possible, whether that's regulatory arbitrage or the asset bases are just all over the place. Maybe we'll see one that's just pure cash and sitting in an offshore bank account. Just with all the regulatory news right now, I'm a huge fan of diversifying among different types of stablecoin models. But Naomi, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of stablecoin models, you also have completely decentralized ones like the DAI, which is most interesting to me because you don't have that risk factor of a centrally issuing party. And so I love DAI. I think that it's just very interesting. I would like to see more competition in that sphere with more DeFi projects dealing with stablecoins. But just to push back a little bit on the idea that money always converges. Historically, we've had physical money. We've had things we have to carry around, and it's just not feasible to carry around gold and silver and copper and salt and seashells and whatever else the market determines. So there's a natural force making that converge. We just don't have that when we have digital goods, because you can have infinite number of coins essentially in your wallet, and there's no reason for you to have to choose between them. These can all be operating under the hood seamlessly, interacting with each other. It could be very liquid. This is something that Scott Stornetta, who was cited 4 out of 8 times in the Satoshi white paper for Bitcoin, this is what he's talked about at length. This idea of this multi-coin economy where all of these things are happening under the hood. We may not even know what we're spending. We might just have algorithms kind of working all that out for us. And so I definitely see a space for lots of competition, the same way that we didn't converge on one toothpaste, the same way we didn't converge on one deodorant. I don't think we're going to converge on one money either.